Welcome to session 4 of our Hebrews Bible study, where we are now getting into chapter 2 and enjoying that. Where we're up to so far, in a nutshell, over the last 3 sessions, is we've seen that there's this person called the Son, who is God's final word, God's last word, and he is superior to angels, and he is divine, and the writer has been demonstrating with passion and using Old Testament scriptures that this incredible person comes to us as a climactic message from God, never to be superseded. And then in chapter 2 he begins saying, you've got to listen to this, you've got to pay close attention, don't neglect this. This is way beyond anything that's ever come from God before. This is the fulfillment of all that has come before in the Old Testament. He's come. This is God's final word. And we find out that his title is, this title that is bestowed upon him is the Son. He's been God's Son for eternity, but he becomes the royal Son after his crucifixion and exaltation. He's crowned with this royal title, the Son. So we've been really getting into that, and now we are into chapter 2, verse 5. I'm going to read that to you, and we're going to read up to and including verse 9. So it says, "Now it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come, of which we are speaking. It has been testified somewhere, what is man, that you are mindful of him? Or the Son of Man, that you care for him? You made him for a little while lower than the angels. You've crowned him with glory and honour, putting everything in subjection under his feet. Now, in putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing outside his control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him, but we see him who, for a little while, was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus, crowned with glory and honour because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone." Where do we start with this? This is not an easy letter to understand, but if we just slow down and work through it piece by piece, it should make sense. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is that the writer says we're talking about the world to come. And I don't know about you, but at that point I sort of go, are we? I didn't know that. When did that happen? Where did that happen? In order to understand that, you need to understand the way the Bible understands the world to come. Our mind immediately with that language tends to go to the age after Christ returns, the age of the future age, the age of glory, the age of the resurrection, whatever you want to call it. For the Bible writers, it wasn't quite as straightforward as that. Their understanding was that the coming of Jesus was the beginning of the world to come. And that specifically also that the resurrection of Jesus really was the instigation of a brand new age. Resurrection had begun. The age to come had broken in on the present age. And so where in chapter 1 the writer's talking about the Son being crowned with glory and enthroned at the right hand of the Father after his resurrection and exaltation, you see really there he's in the world to come as far as he's concerned. Later on in this letter, when writing to those in the church and describing those who are believers, he says that we have tasted of the power of the age to come. So if you're in Christ and you're being filled with the Holy Spirit and you've been woken up to the things of the kingdom, you're living in the reality of the age to come. It's so when he says we're talking about the world to come, he's not talking about some future point. He's saying, well, it is that, but it's broken in on now. And so he's wanting us to expand our thinking and realize that we're talking about something that is breaking in on our reality now, as well as that which will be fully realized at Christ's return. So then I want to draw your attention where he then quotes from the Old Testament, and he quotes from Psalm 8. What is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you care for him? You made him for a little while lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything in subjection under his feet. Now here's the question I want to ask you. Up till now, we've seen that the author has been contrasting angels to the Son, showing that the Son is superior. In this passage here, who or what is the writer comparing angels to? He's doing it again, but who to? Pause and see you in a few minutes, and or maybe a few seconds. It's not really a hard question. See you soon, and come back with the answer of who the writer is comparing angels to now. Pause. Welcome back. Yes, mankind. It's mankind. He says, God has not subjected the world to come to angels. And then he quotes from Psalms where he talks about God subjecting creation to mankind. And so the next question I want to ask you is, well, what does this quotation here teach us about mankind? In this quotation, there's a few things that it says that show us some truth about mankind. So have a look through this quote from Psalm 8 and write down a few things that it teaches us about mankind. Pause. Welcome back. What do we have here? Well, we learn, I guess, two main things. One is that mankind is a little lower than the angels, that in the created order of God, in that sense, we have God who's creator, not created. Then we have the angels, those who are, in a sense, they exist on a higher plane, if you like, on a heavenly kind of plane. Then we have mankind, who exists primarily on an earthly plane, but is exalted over creation. So we see that mankind is a little lower than the angels, and yet he is above and over everything else in creation, that God has subjected all of creation to mankind and has crowned him with the glory and an honor, and has put everything in subjection under his feet. That's what we see there. Now, when talking about the age to come a moment ago, remember I said that it's like the future age breaking in on the now, that the world to come is now, but the world to come is not yet. And a lot of Bible teaching, we need to understand, involves this tension of now and not yet. God's kingdom has come in Jesus, but it's not yet fully come. And we have to get used to that tension if we're going to understand Bible teaching, because you find it a lot, and if you're going to get your expectations right for the Christian life. And so I want to ask you this question. How does the writer here, in the verses after the quotation of Psalm 8, so the verses here, particularly, I guess, the second half of verse 8 and the rest of verse 8, how does the writer acknowledge that there's a now and there's a not yet? So look at verse 8 again, and then ask yourself, how is the writer acknowledging that there is something now, but actually not yet? Pause. Welcome back. Well, what he's acknowledging that actually everything has been subjected in creation to mankind and is under his control in that sense. And yet he also recognizes we don't yet see this. We see a creation that is by no means completely and fully under the control of mankind. It's not true. We see natural disasters. We see sometimes animals turning on people and killing them. We see all kinds of viruses, for example, in creation that have dominion over mankind, in a sense that they kill mankind. And so even though that's the order of God that's been established, we don't yet see it. There's something about it that's not yet in the order of God, as a result of the fall and sin coming into the world and God's judgment on creation as a result of that. So that's what's being taught here. And yet he says, actually though, do you know what? We do see now, so we don't yet see that, but actually we do see something now. We see, and here is now named for the first time, Jesus. We see Jesus, and he is crowned with glory and honor. You see, in the passage that quotes Psalm 8, it says humanity has been crowned with glory and honour, and yet actually very often anything but. But now we do see one who has been crowned with glory and with honour, and his name is Jesus. So his name now mentioned for the first time. That and it's very, very important what the writer's doing here, because he's saying this is the destiny for humanity, to be crowned with glory and honour over all of creation, now and to come. And we don't yet see it. But we do see one. We do see one who for a little while was made lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honour. So hold on a minute. So the author spent the whole of chapter 1 demonstrating that the Son is superior to angels, and now he's saying this one, whose name is Jesus, for a little while was lower than the angels. Well, what's going on here? How do we put this all together? How does this whole thing hold together? What is happening here? Follow me now. I'm going to have to read my notes more carefully because this is fairly complex, but I think we'll be able to get it. So firstly, the eternal Son of God, who is divine and through whom the Father created all things, eternal, divine, the Son of God from eternity, we are introduced to in the first few verses of the letter. But then in his incarnation, as he takes on flesh, as he becomes a human, he becomes Son of Man. The eternal Son of God, he becomes Son of Man. Now that's a very important phrase, because Son of Man really just means human in a kind of a human language to describe a male. In biblical language, it wasn't like an amazing kind of title, and yet it actually was an amazing title, because in the prophet Daniel, in chapter 7, he prophesies about one like a Son of Man, who the Father entrusts with kingdom and authority and dominion forever and ever and ever. And so when Jesus refers to himself as Son of Man, which is his favourite title for himself, he's saying, I'm human. He's also saying, I'm the fulfillment. I am that character in Daniel 7. And so in the incarnation, the eternal Son of God becomes Son of Man. And for a time, for a little while, lower than the angels, because he truly becomes a human. He lays aside the privileges of deity, Philippians 2, does not consider equality with God a thing to be grasped, though he existed in the form of God, becomes human, lower than the angels for a little while. And then through his suffering of death, which is his radical obedience to the Father's will, as he embraces the just judgment due on humanity for our sin, through that act, God has now exalted him. He humbled himself to death, even death on a cross, and God has now exalted him and given him the highest name, or in Hebrews, crowned him with glory and with honour. He has raised him up to that exalted place where he is now superior to angels and has inherited a more excellent name than them, royal Son, crowned as the King who is the Son. And so what we have now is the eternal Son of God, who has taken on humanity as a Son of Man for all of eternity, and now has been glorified as a man, and so has taken humanity into heaven. And so his glorification has glorified humanity. Humanity has been taken up into an exalted position above the angels. And so now we have a divine human who is exalted in the heavens, waiting for all of his enemies to be gathered under his feet. Wow. That's what's being taught here. It's extraordinary, it's mysterious, it's wonderful, it's glorious. And to sum things up really today, I want us to just pause, and we're not going to do any more teaching. There's too much to go in to carry on. It would be too long, so it's going to be a shorter one. But we're going to end just by focusing on this final sentence where it says, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. The following verses will unpack that even more, but let's just live with that phrase for now. I want to leave you with that phrase, by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. Because of his willingness to go to the lowest, darkest place, the Father has exalted him and given him the name above every name. The Father's crowned him with glory and honour. He is now seated at the right hand of the Majesty on high. And what I'm going to ask you to do in this time is simply to spend a few minutes just honouring him, bowing the knee, acknowledging this divine human, this God-man, this Jesus Christ, fully God, fully man, who's been lower than anyone else and is now higher than anyone else, and who fulfills this amazing prophecy about God's purpose for humanity, that everything will be subjected under his feet, and that now the Father's said to him, sit at my right hand until I make all of your enemies a footstool for your feet, that Jesus' destiny is utter victory, and our destiny in him is glory and victory. We've been raised up with him. We've been seated with him in heavenly places because he did all that he did as the representative for humanity. He takes us with him. There'll be more of that in the weeks to come. But I'm just simply going to just ask us to have a few moments to just honour him, thank him, praise him, and glorify him. God bless you.